right, so this is the Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff podcast. I'm your host, Sean Kneese, and on this show I have off-the-cuff and candid conversations about the big topics in the world. And today I wanted to do an episode on comedy and like the boundaries of comedy, because like today, like we're in an age where like people are more aware and empathetic, but like I wanted to like, and you know, there's more people have more ideas of like what you should or shouldn't joke about, but I wanted to have a nuanced conversation about like, is there a balance? Like, is there a time to be controversial? Is there, or like sometimes people too sensitive, or is like areas you shouldn't joke about? And like, should comedy push boundaries? Like, is there a right way to be controversial? And from listening to the show, you probably know, like I've done, like I do a lot of improv, and I've done like some comedic acting in the past, and I have two people. I have two people joining me from the comedy scene today. I have Obi O'Brien, who's you do sketch comedy. She does sketch comedy and stand-up comedy, and you have two sketch shows, right? If you want to mention them and introduce yourself a bit more.
Yeah, I actually my pet project, which is my entire heart, is a show called Googly Eyes, which combines stand-up and sketch comedy and music. So if anyone's interested in giving a hand at sketch, reach out to me. Our next show is September 24th on Tuesday at The Tank. And I have a special guest host, Antonio, Powerful Comedy. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this is the New York. She's talking about New York City.
Yes, in New York.
I didn't even mention like what area everybody's in. But this is New York, New Jersey. Well, I'm New Jersey, but New York, my other two guests. And Laszlo Medina is the other guest. So I'll let you introduce yourself too.
Hi, what's up? I'm Laszlo. Yeah, I do improv, I do sketch, make music, make videos, make weird t-shirts. But yeah, that's me. I'm in New York as well.
Cool. So I guess I'll let both of you kind of just, if you want to take turns, just kind of give your view about the subject I brought up and like what's your experience and like opinion on it, and we can kind of go from there.
Sure.
Well, I'll say that part of the reason why I straddle between sketch and stand-up is because what's cool about sketch is that you're in a room with people, so you're getting a lot of feedback, but then a lot of times the jokes, they'll get watered down. And while you end up putting out a product that maybe more people would want to consume, I do feel like some truth is lost. Whereas with stand-up, you're out there and it's just you and the truth. And the audiences are very sophisticated these days. Whether you're doing it live or online, they can just tell when you're full of shit. And so in sketch, you can get away with watering down the truth because there's pleasure in the ensemble and seeing people coming together in cohesion with this. But then when it's just you on stage or just you in video, there's not that same forgivingness around watering down the truth. So that's part of what draws me, is that I think that there needs to be both. Something that's easy to consume, like a Harlequin romance novel, and then something that's like a little bit edgier that names truths.
Yeah, I've never done dabbled in stand-up, but I've never really stuck with it. I've mostly done improv and sketch. I do like the collaborative part about it, but I totally see like, oh yeah, like yeah, because you know in improv sometimes you like have an idea of what you're thinking, and then you're immediately bouncing it off of someone else, so it could totally change for the for better or for worse. But yeah, I mean, as far as like I don't know what we're talking about in terms of like, you know, things that are off limits and stuff. Yeah, I think, you know, there's definitely ways to push limits and to like ride that line. And sometimes people go over it. But I think it's pretty obvious when people are trying to go over it. and when people are like being smart about it. I don't know. That's what I've noticed, and there are certain like bigger comics that are doing that. Whatever you want to call them. Like, in my opinion, I'm like, oh, they're just being like edgelords, and I choose not to support them personally because I know there's like a billion other comics I'd rather support. So that's where I'm at.
I guess it's there's a difference between like if someone's just naturally controversial because they're trying to make a point with their comedy, or if somebody's just out there to be like an edgelord and just offend. And also, I feel like at this point, like nothing's really shocking anymore. Like we're used to in comedy where certain things hadn't been done before, and then there was, but now it's like everything's been said. So it's like, how do you even, if you're just trying to do that, it doesn't really work as well.
I think you bring up a great point, Sean. I think from an artist's perspective, working in a smaller box is always going to serve you better. Whether you're an actor, a comic, an improviser, a sketch writer. And so, I go to a lot of open mics. That's the way that you test material, stand-up world. And then you'll just hear these really strong jokes about gangbang, we'll say. But to Laszlo's point, I mean, we're so desensitized that there's nothing particularly interesting about the gangbang. And in fact, there's a lot you can do before you get to the gangbang, right? Like, there's like a nuance around just like, I don't know, like a brush of a hand that you can make so many jokes out of that's really pleasing to everyone and probably will invoke a greater sensation than just getting right to the gangbang. So I think it's served us in an interesting way that we are desensitized to so much, because I think it forces us as artists to go back into that smaller box and find the little things that spark pleasure in us and in our audiences.
Yeah, it works, I guess. I think a lot of comics, like, it works when they talk from like personal experience, like just like stuff that's funny about their day-to-day life. Kind of going, yeah. But I also think like because I know like in like comedy can also be used to kind of like challenge the status quo or like make people think about things they otherwise wouldn't think about. I mean, Bill Hicks is often like brought up in this discussion, but Bill Hicks, like, he would bring up stuff about like U.S. foreign policy or like the military industrial complex and like certain wars we were involved in, but he would like use humor to kind of get people to think about what we're doing in a different way. Like, oh, do we really need to be involved with this over there? Is like everything we're doing over there right? Like sometimes comedians can kind of use that, and that would like be offensive to some people. Like, well, especially like back when he was doing it too, because but like at the same time he was making like an important point. So I guess that's like that's why sometimes there's like a good reason to be controversial. But then there's just people who are just like being controversial to be controversial.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot. Like, for example, as someone, it doesn't really matter like what I think about this guy at this point. But let's say Dave Chappelle, right? Yeah. Like, I was a huge fan of his for years. I loved his shows. I loved his show. I loved his stand up. And then last few years, he's definitely like doubled down on this thing about trans people, triple down at this point. And it's like I just, at this point, I'm out. I'm like, like, it's fine. I accept his like work, like overall work is pretty genius. Half Baked, still one of my favorite movies as far as, I don't know, good solid stoner movies go. But like at this point, I've like, there's like so many other really cool comics that are also like pushing the line and doing stuff that I'd rather support. And for me, it's like, I don't know, it just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, because he used to, like, with this show, he was doing a lot of like commentary on race and everything that was ahead of its time, and like he kind of brought in a lot of like new things to comedy that weren't, like, especially with a show like the Chappelle Show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, classic.
There's a beauty to that, though, Laszlo, that he lost you, right? Because he lost you, but then there's other people that he's sharing a perspective with that they may agree with, and they may feel like, wow, somebody is providing a voice to this. And I'm not commenting whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Obviously, it's just a truth that exists that other people share in that truth. And so I think it's great that we're reaching a point where there just isn't this mass appeal, right? Like it's not just like a McDonald's of comedy for everybody.
Yeah.
We are saying, cool, you do you. I'm going to shift my energy and attention to someone else.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't really agree with like a lot of stuff he said in like his newer jokes, but I don't think his goal was that like, I'm going to do this just to be mean. I think it was just like the way he was raised and like the way he saw like thing. I think he was just like, to him, that's like, I guess where he was coming from. But
think about it. Like loneliness is an epidemic that is affecting us across the world. And I think a part of that loneliness, and this is why I keep harping on this idea of truth, is that we have these intrusive thoughts, whether they're right or wrong, whether, Sean, to your point, they're derived from how we were raised or just anecdotally about experiences we've had. And to say that that's a bad thought and to push those thoughts into a corner, that just drives that loneliness. So I think having different voices that have different perspectives is what's really good. And I think that it's needed to keep everything in check. I just love the idea of like the yin and yang, keeping everything in check and not having one purveyor of what is right and what is wrong, because that can easily slippery slope the other way. Where then all of a sudden we reach a point where it's like, Chappelle is 100% right. And we're all like, wait, no, how did that happen?
So I guess you're saying like there should be, I guess, more openness, and then then people can have a more open discussion. Like
exactly. Because that is how we reach truth, is through discourse. So if we're having these thoughts in our head and we're just festering with them, we're lonely. And also, how are we ever going to come to a greater truth of, wait, have you thought about it this way? And I think social media has been horrible in allowing us to indulge in our one way of thinking and not having that discourse, because the algorithm is set up to only curate and feed you content that you like.
Yeah. And that's, then people kind of stay in their bubble, and then it's not comfortable. But and then like also I in a way I kind of agree with what you're saying, because it's like, even if somebody is saying something that could be considered, I guess, like offensive or whatever, then like if you're offended by it, then you can at least have an honest conversation with the person, right? And they can learn. It's like if someone's just being polite because they're told to be polite, they're told to think this, then it's like, well, they're not genuinely like understanding trans people or seeing them that way. They still have these doubts in their mind, but it's because like they're being told to not say that. But then if they actually say what they think, then it's like, wait, no. Then you can like show them a different way to. So then you can have like an actual like conversation about it. Then maybe they could genuinely change their mind about it too.
Yeah.
But I also know that like I think there was like one trans person like listened to his comedy show, and that like they were like really hurt by it, and they killed them. So I don't know exactly like what happened with them.
I think the story on that one is that he became friends with that trans person, and then that trans person, something transpired in their community, and it was the community turned against that person, and that's what drove them to suicide. And that was Chappelle's point, was that communities turn against like their own people for whatever reason, and it kind of it destroys the point of community, which is, I think, supposed to be there to help you, not tear you apart.
So that was like in one of his last specials, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was the one that like brought out more controversy, I guess. So I guess what you're saying in a way is like having a community that will like accept you even if you say something that they think is wrong.
Yeah.
So then
like we're missing nuance. I mean, we're having this nuanced discussion, but I think we're missing nuance. And I think we're also, because of the way that media is being created these days, where it's trying to appeal to a master global market, a lot of that nuance is gone. So like, whereas we'd have like the rom-coms and I don't know, these types of movies where it showed the nuance of like the human condition. Now we just have these action flicks, because regardless of the language that you speak, you can consume it. And so again, I just think we're being trained to not have to deal with nuanced discussions, nuanced perspectives.
So I guess like rather you think there's too much of like maybe shutting down an idea rather than hearing it out. Like,
yeah. I mean, just like what a boring life that is, right? Like our life expectancies are so long these days, and yet one of the biggest issues that we're all dealing with is rampant inflammation, right? There's just been a soaring of autoimmune diseases. And I do think a lot of that is because, sure, we're getting to live longer, but we're just like shutting down all these thoughts and ideas and expressions in us. And that's just like, I don't know, it's not, I don't think that's good for the body. I'd rather just speak my truth. And then by speaking my truth, lose some people, maybe like Laszlo, but then gain other people who are like, yeah, you know, I can vibe with this.
so do you think there's a way that maybe a politically incorrect joke could be done in a way that like it's not in mean spirit and it's done in a way where it's like this is obviously a joke versus like somebody who's like just actually is like being bigoted and ignorant and they're saying like, oh, I'm just being anti-PC. Like, do you think there's a way to distinguish the two? Kind of?
I'm going to let Laszlo answer this.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's a way. I don't think there's a formula, obviously, because then anyone would be able to go up there and do it. But, you know, I've seen a lot of people do it, and it's always like, I'm like, I don't follow him a ton, but like I've seen some of his like Bill Burr is always really good at doing that. Like I'm always surprised because I'm always like, yeah, this doesn't seem like the kind of guy. I'm usually like maybe prejudging him a little bit just based off of his whole vibe. But then I see it, I'm like, oh, he's actually really smart, and like this is like he's doing this so well. Yeah, and there's like all kinds of well-known comics that do it, and I think there's a way to do it, and yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about also just like social media and like as Obi was mentioning, just like how it affects it's also affected us in a lot of good ways because I think there's a lot of a lot of topics and a lot of things that weren't. Like, for example, like police brutality and stuff like that. Like, I've known about it, but I've also, and like a lot of people I know have like been around in like activist circles or like whatever. More like I came out of like much like Sean came out of like the punk rock like circles. So there was a lot of talk about politics, and there was a lot of the historical background about what goes on, especially in like communities of color and their interactions with police. But I feel like before like social media, we just weren't seeing, and before everyone had a camera on their phone, we just weren't seeing police brutality, stuff like that. And you got like the Me Too movement, like there's always been like sexual harassment and things like that, but like now people being able to communicate with each other, we're able to like talk about it more and put it out there and hold people accountable ultimately, and then people are going to call that like cancel culture, I guess, but I personally don't really believe in it. It's just holding people accountable, and for example, like with like Chappelle, like I don't think he's like canceled. He's obviously doing very well. He's just like losing a few people, maybe gaining some people. I mean, I'm out, but I know a lot of other people that I know that are all about him. So, and I just saw that documentary on Louis C.K. I don't know if anyone saw it, but
I didn't see it. Yeah. I know he's starting to like, even despite what he did, slowly, I guess, coming back into things. Even
Sean, I'm going to challenge you though on, you keep saying if the intent is not malicious.
Yeah.
What's wrong if the intent is malicious? I mean, isn't there a truth to wanting to hurt? Like, that's a very truthful thing. It's a very truthful way of being as a human. That sometimes you just want to hurt. You just want to be destructive. And it could be a numerous factors. Like, I don't know, you could have gone through traumatic things in your life, or you could just be constipated, and you just want to go out there and you just want to hurt. Why is that wrong of an approach?
I mean, I guess I don't know if it's necessarily like wrong. I guess I was like saying like more as far as like whether it be comedy I'm drawn to, like is if it was an actual like bigot getting on stage, like saying hateful stuff, or if it's just somebody who's, just kind of controversial with some of their jokes, or they make some politically incorrect jokes, but like it's not coming from like a hateful place necessarily. But like, I'm not saying like they don't have the right to do that, because they do. I believe in free speech, but I just meant like as far as like, would I be drawn to, like, would I support this person, that kind of thing.
I think it's because, when they interview people in jail who've been convicted of crimes that they committed, most of them would say that they're innocent because of whatever reason. And so I think like, even if you have somebody who would be deemed a bigot, I'm sure in their own way they think that they're doing something right. I don't know. It's tough because with Trump, he broke decorum in this country. And I still grapple with whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. Like whether it was just a good thing that we all just kind of held bigotry like to the side, or that it allowed it to come through and people to reveal themselves. I just think, I don't know if it's one of those things you can have an answer to.
So I guess
I think it's also like that's similar to what I was saying about like people being able to communicate over social media. I feel like Trump being to put out his ideas into like mainstream culture, and then people allowing people that share those ideas to like spread those ideas further. I mean, it's there. I don't know. Is it? I don't agree with any of those things, but like I feel like we live in a world where that's totally there's totally that platform for everyone to share those ideas and further spread them. I don't know.
I think this is where I love technology, but I do think regulation should come in, because it's one thing if ideas are spread and there's an honest discourse about, is this right? And we can reach that higher truth because you put the thing out there, versus having bots that fuel things and that we just get advertised these things and think, okay, this is the way it should be. And we're just like, and so there's not an honest discourse. There's just a barrage of almost like, I don't know, like a manipulation that's happening. So that's where I think it gets tricky. If these are honest ideas coming from humans and propelled by humans, then that's interesting. But if it's fueled by bots, then that's just manipulation.
Sure.
And I think that's where the governance has to happen, more so than ideas originated by humans and comics.
Yeah, and also if people don't, I think there's also a problem when people don't engage like with that, or they think the answer is more to just, we gotta take them off the platform, we gotta shut them down. Because like I remember in the years before Trump, like I think because like this kind of progressed in this way, maybe towards like the end of like maybe more when Trump was like running, and then when he became president. Because like I remember like on YouTube, like maybe 10 years ago or so, like there was like these people would like make these videos like debunking these like white nationalist YouTubers and just like making them look stupid, and like and like then they kind of like had the high ground, like because like they were the ones being made fun of were like the white nationalists. But then when people got into like, let's shut them down, let's like we can't do that, like let's take them, instead of just like calling them out as idiots,
right?
Then it kind of validated. It's like, they don't want to hear me speak, they don't want to engage with me, so like they must know what I'm saying is right. So I think that kind of in a way validated it by like being like, let's not engage with this, let's like shut it down.
Not a rabbit hole to to like try to understand these people, and most of these people are disenfranchised, like they're living in their mother's basements. There's like a whole economy of women who support these men financially so they can just sit in their basements and podcast and broadcast out, and these are just underutilized individuals. So to your point, Sean, like pushing them further away doesn't really serve society versus being like, I think you need a job or a marketable skill set. Or, hey, you know what? You're doing this podcasting. Let's put you into something that, I don't know, serve society better. But if you keep pushing people away, they have nothing to lose. So they're just going to keep doubling and tripling down into the position that they have. And the more extreme position is, I think, what's more economical because of the way the algorithms are set up.
Yeah. Laszlo, you were going to add something to that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, because I know, Laszlo, you said, like, you don't really believe there's a cancel culture, that you think, like, maybe it's just people, I guess, responding to what people say and not wanting to support a comedian because of what they say. But, Obi, it seems like maybe, like, you might have a different view. Like, do you think there is a cancel culture? Or?
There is a cancel culture, yeah. I mean, I think there's nothing more pleasing to people than self-righteousness. And if you look at like American society, it's a Protestant nation, right? And so there's that. I still think regardless of what your religion is or your culture is, we are, those underpinnings of like Protestant self-righteousness still lingers. And so the moment that we can like be self-righteous about something, oh, it feels so good. And we're also hierarchical. Like even when we try to make flat structures, we always find ways to create hierarchy. So when there's an opportunity to like take power and create that hierarchy because you went against like the social order, oh, we're going to take it. We're always going to take it. And so now it's just manifesting itself in this cancel culture. And I think previously it was like we were burning people at the stake or we were segregating people. So it was like humans just have like a really fun way of always coming up with ways to be self-righteous and to create hierarchies.
Maybe if you want to go off that, say your
view. No, I mean, I guess when I say like, was talking about cancel culture, I mean, in terms of like affecting, especially like big comedians and like celebrities and stuff. I think there's always going to, as Obi mentioned, there's always going to be people that are going to, still be like interested in those comedians or celebrities or whatever that they're always going to have. So that's what I meant when I said like, in terms of they're not really being canceled. Is there a whole like culture of cancellation in general? Yeah, I think yeah, there can be like a lot of people. I think cancel is maybe not the right word because it's like, it sounds, I don't know, it's very intense sounding, but like, because it's like canceled, it's not really like that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people can come down on you, and if you're like super famous, like it might not really matter to you, I guess, or it might not really affect you in the long run. I guess it does affect. Oh, damn it. Anyway, but like Louis had to just like shift everything over to his website or whatever, or like, what's his name? Alex Jones is kicked off of YouTube, and so he's like just does everything off his own website, like stuff like that. It's just like they just shift over to a different platform. But like maybe like a smaller comedian or just like a regular person could get called out in their own community or something. That might be pretty different, I would say. But
yeah, I think it's pretty devastating. I think it's a complete destruction. I don't know about you, but like you get a mean comment on Instagram, like that hurts. Imagine having your entire community turn against you. I think that it is unfortunate, but not unexpected.
Right.
Because I just think this desire to. That's why I say it's like quite funny. There's just this innate desire in humans to destroy things because it is actually through destruction that we have growth. Right, like World War II, that is kind of what stirred, not World War II, sorry, what was it, Civil War. The Civil War is what helped bring upon like the great economic growth in the United States. And so that's just like an ugly truth of like humans and civilization is like through this destruction, like something new grows. So I don't know. I think that's where that like innate desire to destroy comes in. Probably overcomplicated this discussion.
So, you know, it was going to get there.
We go back to telling jokes.
But I guess like the question that comes to mind, like, is that really censorship though? Like, if they get backlash in their community, or is that just other people expressing their free speech that they don't like what this person said? Because like, there's a difference between like, oh, we'll shut this person down, and just like getting a lot of backlash from a joke you said. And I think they know they would get some backlash making those jokes too. So.
Coming back to this idea that these are all like just really polite words like censorship, cancellation to describe like how primal this whole thing is, right? Like the way Laszlo was describing, those, comedians will just shift to different platforms. I mean, the strong, the mentally strong, the economically strong, the emotionally strong, they're able to do that shift. And so like with censorship, it's like competing factions of who's stronger. You have the people coming in and saying, we're going to shut this down on the person who can either like fight, flight, or fawn. Right. And then I think that's what we're just seeing. It's just like we're as evolved as we think we are, we're not. We're all very primal. And it's like whomever just has enough guts and willpower and I think some dumb luck is like who survives.
Yeah. Well, I guess also like you're not really opening the door for that person to grow if you just isolate them and shut them down. Like somebody like could be a bigot or like think ignorant things and be a bigot, and then then their views could evolve and they could shift out of that and they could realize, oh, I was wrong with all that later on. But like if they're just isolated and shut down, like will that push them more in the other direction, or will it still open the door for them to grow and evolve past that?
I mean, I think for these discussions, it's like the extreme views of like the bigots, like they kind of are who they are. Like it's such a systemic issue with them that's not. I think it's more the people in the middle ground where it's like I have this thought. I'm sure it'll piss some people off, but I want to share this thought. And those are the people that I think it's interesting, and because like I don't think Chappelle is a bad person. And I don't think he is trying to hurt anybody, but I think he has these views. And then to your point, it's like, I think part of his issue has been that the commentary that he gets on his views are very superficial. Like most people who are coming out strong against him haven't even watched his special, heard the jokes all the way through. And I think that's where the problem is. It's like, if you're going to censor somebody and engage in a discussion, you have to hear the entirety of what was said, not just like sparse out the parts, the sound bites, and then take that to fuel your position. And I think that's what's happening a lot too, is I don't think people care about the truth. I think people are just looking for sound bites that they can take out to create an inflammatory perspective to fuel their own status.
And I guess Laszlo, you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I definitely watched a few of those Chappelle specials. Yeah, but I've also definitely like not watched the last one because I was just like, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have anything else to say.
But I guess I understand what you're saying. So you're saying like, because like most people aren't the extreme. Like some people might just have a thought about something that's not necessarily politically correct. Like,
yeah,
I guess because a lot of and it's relatively new too. Like the people are becoming more aware of transgender people and stuff like that. So it's natural. Some people at this point might not fully understand that. And does that make them a bad person because they don't yet fully understand that? Or maybe it's just like their own experiences, like they don't have that much experience with that, or just like their own, like, is it okay to sometimes just have a thought that's not necessarily politically correct, but it's not necessarily means that you're hateful. It's just
But also, like, you don't necessarily have to share it with a bunch of people either. But, I don't know.
But
That's
like
just
you
me.
don't have to put it in a comedy routine. It's like,
Not necessarily, no. I guess if you can make it funny, I don't know. You can give it a shot, sure. And maybe that's what Chappelle's trying to do. I guess personally, I don't find. I think maybe that's it for me. Like his formula isn't working for me.
Yeah.
Like, and because I bet someone else could do it. I bet like Eric Andre could do it, and I might think it was funny, but I can't say.
yeah. So I guess like you think maybe there's like a way that resonates with you and the way that doesn't resonate, that where people can kind of.
I think so too, and I think obviously people bring up, especially in comedy, the idea of punching up or punching down, and I think there's some truth to that. For me, like, I mean, like Obi was talking about, just like people wanting to, I don't know. I can't think of a better word to say it, but to me, it's like talking shit or whatever. But like, I think a lot of people I know definitely want to talk shit, but in a lot of cases when we're talking shit, it's usually, punching down. I think you can also be like reflect, uh, um, even within your own, but also like within your own community too. I feel like you can, I don't know, like I'm Mexican and I could like say something about other Latinos with like then like with like a white person, like because there's like a hierarchy and social hierarchies, but like my brain's not working. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, like if you're saying like if somebody makes a joke about Mexicans and like they're really like just being ignorant or whatever, like it's different than like if you made a joke about Mexicans, or even if somebody who was a good friend of yours made a joke with you about Mexicans, like and you're two good friends.
Yeah.
Like, two different things. Yeah.
Right. But that's not necessarily about comedy. That's just like there's a difference between also like having a personal conversation with people and like going on stage or doing a special or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So is there I guess a way to balance it? Like could you be sensitive and empathetic to like other people while also like pushing the boundaries and like speaking your mind and not being afraid to be I guess controversial too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's totally, I've seen it done.
Well, I think to Laszlo, to your point, is that it's cool to have as many voices as you can, because if the way somebody delivers content doesn't appeal to you, you can go to somebody else. Like to your point, Andre doing this, approaching the trans topic might be appeal to you in a way that Chappelle just can't. And there's just a craftsmanship about it. And I think it's cool because it creates opportunities for different people. I don't think one person should be the be all of any particular perspective or content.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also kind of agree with what Laszlo said. Like, just as far as my personal taste, like punching up versus punching down. Like when I mentioned Bill Hicks earlier, like he was controversial, but a lot of times he was punching up. Like when he was talking about like military-industrial complex and all that. I like the punching up kind of controversial better.
Can we also address? I've noticed this phenomenon in the comedy space, which is, in order to be perceived as punching up, I think people acquire attributes that give up status. So they'll try to portray themselves as poorer or more disabled than they actually are, so that it gives them that wiggle room to be perceived as punching up. I don't know. I think that's. I don't know what I think about that. Like, I think that's.
So like, do you have like an example of that, or is like anyone?
No, it's like a trend I've seen across. Like, I see a lot of people alleging poverty in the space, and yet I see them taking multiple classes. I'm like, how are you affording all these classes if you're poor?
Well, I kind of got that vibe from like Louis C.K.
I've definitely seen that.
You see it, right? Like, and I'm a child of immigrants. Like, we don't, like, we could actually be, we'll be poor and we will not say it because that results in deportation. So it's also like an American comic thing, like the privilege of walking around saying, I'm poor. Yet you're doing all these things and I'm like, I don't think, like, even just a normally employed person can afford all these things you're doing. So by what standard are you poor?
It's also the New York thing. like you're like, oh, where are you getting all that generational wealth from, pal?
Yeah.
That's the only way you're paying for those classes. I don't know. I was doing like work studies and shit to like
no,
take my first
I do math on these things. So I'm petty, and I'm just like,
yeah. No, I mean, I definitely have like a little bit of what me and my partner refer to as like class rage. Where we're just like, oh, and to me, yeah, definitely back in the day, I was like, wait, you're taking classes at all three improv schools right now, same time? That shit's like $400.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, and I think Sean, I was mentioning Sean, me and Sean both coming up in like the punk scene. That's definitely a huge thing in terms of like, it's not like most of the kids I knew growing up in the punk scene came from like wealthier suburbs and stuff. And like, that's really common. You'll see like kids hop in freight trains and they're like living this like crusty hobo life. But like, meanwhile, they grew up in a pretty cushy environment. And, and like, I don't know, as I get older, I don't judge that as much because I'm like, I mean, I guess there's some amount of like trying to escape that world and like trying to, I don't know, trying to do the opposite of like whatever. Maybe when you're younger, you want to be a contrarian. And because I have friends who have like hippies that raise them and then they'll like, well, not my friends, but I know people that have like been hippies and then they get more like,
I guess, or whatever.
Yeah, like if you're raised like by hippies, like you want to be more conservative, or like if you're raised by conservatives, then you want to be like an anarchist or whatever. Like, so I can see like some people doing stuff like that in in the punk scene or whatever. This has nothing to do with comedy. But anyway,
you nailed it though. That's my point. Is like when we set standards like punching up or punching down. I think what it does is that it just encourages fake behaviors of oh, I'm poor, or oh, I have this disability, and I say this so that I can express a truth that exists within me in a way that decreases the likelihood of getting canceled, right? Like these individuals, even though they came from perceived privileged backgrounds, there's obviously something in them that doesn't sit well. So they go into this community and then they try to obscure their background. And so I just think that I see that happening in comedy. So I don't know what I think about this idea of punching up or punching down, because I think people manipulate data sets so that they can be in a position to be perceived as punching up. And it's like, well, it's just not truthful. It's just not truthful. So why don't we just like cut the nonsense and just be truthful?
Sure.
Yeah, and that also made me think of like how, often a comedian will pick out someone in the audience to make fun of or whatever. Well, like if it's a popular comedian, then whoever they're picking on the audience is less likely making less money than them. Right. So like they're punching down in some way by doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened in school. Like we all like rallied behind like the beautiful people who like there's just like they showed it in Mean Girls. Like there's something really pleasing about an alpha, whether it's a man or a woman, just going out there and being alpha. And the best comedians are alphas. They're up there with a point of view and they're just, like, so I also find it funny, like when I see comedians and they try to play this like coy, like the stand-ups, like, I don't know if I want to be on stage or I'm a loser. And it's like, dude, it's
like a Louis C.K. type. I'm thinking like, cause I remember he would always like be kind of like self-deprecating or he'd actually kind of like always be like, oh, I'm the everyman, even when he was like a popular.
He's got like an alphaism about him. And I think that's the thing that nobody like actually addresses, is that we think it's like the kooky ones that make it in comedy. And it's actually the ones who are like fundamentally alpha, who then like are able to weave these stories in a way that like is magnetic and relatable to us. But
what do you mean by alpha? Just like the confident ones, or
the confidence? Like, you have to be a confident person to get up there solo with a perspective and just keep driving that perspective home. So, like, this idea of punching up or punching down, Sean, to your point, like, I think when a comic is standing up there and they're doing their thing, it's you're punching down because you're already in a position of strength to be able to get up there and be like, boom, boom, boom. Public speaking? Come on.
yeah. Well, they probably didn't start out. It was probably like when they first put themselves out there, it was like awkward. It's probably like the years of doing it too. Like the more confidence they built too.
Yeah, but even the endurance it takes to build up that years is privilege, right? Most people like would break to just keep doing that and going with that. Like, that's why I just think this idea of punching up, punching down is just kind of nonsense.
So you think they're all kind of punching down in some way?
Sorry, what was that?
So you think they're all kind of punching down in some way or the other? Because like,
yeah, because there's you are operating at just a different, on a higher level to be able to get up there and do that in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when people are talking about punching up, punching down, they're usually talking about, like, I don't know, just like social structures and like power structures and stuff like that too. So like, but yeah, I mean, but like you were mentioning about, I never really considered, but I do. But what you were talking about, like people like taking on extra, I don't know, like tacking on extra levels of oppression onto their identity or whatever. Sure, I could see that happening. I don't think it happens that often, but I could see people doing it. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not doing stand up. Maybe you're seeing some. I'm not in the stand up scene. The improv scene, I don't know. It's hard to tell because we're like doing characters. We're doing like, all kinds of weird ass shit. There's too much going on to understand like everyone's like motives sometimes on an improv stage.
well, I guess also like improv, it's like in sketch, it's about like the team too, so it's a little bit different,
totally
controversial there versus like a stand up. Like that's usually where people are more
it's
risky.
pretty clear like where people are coming from, I think, on stage in stand up than when you're doing characters or doing improv where doing scenes.
There's like because I think to be a great performer, again, actor, stand-up, improv, or sketch, is a vulnerability. And so if you're doing vulnerability through characters, that at least gives you a little bit of a block. But for stand-up, it's the vulnerability. And so I do think that people tend to manufacture fake vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I have always like described stand-up and improv, like stand-up's like, improv's like being in a band, where stand-up is like getting up there with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
I've been in bands. I've never been able to get up with an acoustic guitar, and I've done stand-up, and I did not. It freaked me the fuck out, and I think it was like for those reasons. Is like I'm used to like having a little bit of a space between me and the audience, and
Yeah.
But Obi, do you find that people are like more afraid to take risks with comedy, or do you think people are more reserved with their comedy? Or do you think people like they still will like say just like what's on their mind, or do you think it's changed a bit?
I think people are afraid to take risks with comedy, and that's why I've like gone outside of my circles. And I'm gonna give a shout out to one show in Bayside. I love going out there. I love listening to those comics because they just get up there and they speak their truth. And that crowd in Bayside in particular, they will not tolerate nonsense. Like, you can see through fake. They can you have to speak truth to them, and so like it naturally makes its way so that the comics that are there who can hold the audience are speaking a truth. And I think that's like, I think that's super cool, and that's where I've kind of like focused my attention to try to figure out how to speak the truth and deliver it in a way that is appetizing to people, like not preachy, not that I'm feeling superior, but that allows me to be vulnerable and also people consume it. Because
like speaking your own subjective truth, you mean, like your own?
Yeah, because that's what drives me as an artist is I want to connect with people, and that's why I like comedy, because I do, like, at the core of it, it is like identifying the truth, and then I think it's hopeful, because it's just comedy for me is that step after drama, right? Like the person like gets a bad diagnosis. Like I wrote this sketch, and this guy is like his name is Francois, the character, and he retains his semen. And at the end of the sketch, the doctor comes up to him and is like, Francois, we got some bad news. Your prostate is about to explode. And Francois was like, explode. And then he looks at the audience and goes, with happiness? Like, there's that, it just went from really bad to like, wait, there's hope. So, yeah, I think, what was my point? My point is that, I like that next step of I don't know, the hope.
Like taking it to the next level.
Yeah, and connecting with people. That was my point. It was like the connecting with people is that's what I'm trying to do, is connect with people and then show that even in the darkest of times, like there's hope. There's that twist. Because I think our minds are very powerful, and people talk so much about trauma these days, trauma in your body. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but you can also put success in your body. And so instead of like being so focused on like where there's trauma in our body, I think being focused on like the moments that feel good and reframing that perspective of, you just got this horrible diagnosis, you're going to explode with happiness. Like, oh, that's so beautiful to me.
Yeah.
So that's
like taking the trauma and turning it into something.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
So that's what fuels me as an artist. And that's why I'm happy to look into the dark side of things, because it's like, okay, then from that darkness, from those intrusive thoughts that people have that are politically incorrect, you can take it to that next step and reframe the hope.
So I guess before we wrap up, any final thoughts or things you'd like to add, either of you?
Oh, with all that being said, I hope I don't get canceled after this podcast.
It's not going to happen because cancel culture just not exists. No, whatever. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I like that last thing you said, Obi, for sure. Like trying to reframe things, on a positive note, and taking trauma and flipping it, and like, then that makes me think of like what we were saying about like ultimately like people are going to have their own boundaries, and like audiences are going to have their own boundaries, and then like comedians are going to want to like push those boundaries, and everyone's going to do it differently, and sometimes it's going to hit and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're going to really be into a comedian for like 20 years and then they change their style, and then you're just going to move on, and that's fine. There's a bunch of other whatever weirdos to support, and but there's a lot of voices, and there's a lot of art out there to consume. Thanks a lot to platforms like this, or like platforms, the internet. You might have heard of it.
Talking about the deep stuff. Obi, yeah. Did you give your last thoughts, Obi, or?
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it. Thank you for this discussion. It was interesting. It was a lot. I was curious. I'm like, should I be funny on this, or you're like we're just gonna go right into the deep thoughts? I'm like, all right, you just unlocked my inner.
Yeah, but like the deep side, and we could throw some, with some humor here and there thrown in, but like diving deep still.
Going deep.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to hear from the audience, like your thoughts on this topic. Hopefully, this was insightful or like made you think about things. So just reach out on social media. Let's talk about the deep stuff for your thoughts. And if either one of you have anything to plug or anything, I don't know.
Again, just googly eyes. September 25th, Tuesday, 6:30. Sorry, September 24th, 6:30 p.m. at the Tank.
I've gotten shows right now. I'm taking a little break from improv and performing. But, find me on social media, Laszlo, Laszlo, LMAO, Laszlo, LMAO. I'm on Instagram, TikTok. And you can look up my old sketch team, Sweeties. We did some pretty weird shit that might be entertaining. I don't know.
Right, and those who want to keep updated with the show, it's Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff on Instagram, or my personal is SKNEESE1989. Sean Kneese as my podcast, and also like my other creative projects and everything. And our podcast is on Spotify or iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts. And thank you both again for coming on. That's about it for this episode. I'll catch you on the next one.
Cool.
Thanks, Sean.